intelligent to perform it. And news guys and news ladies who think that they can out-cute the guest and get them. See, they're not going for a conversation. They've decided in advance that they're constructing a moment. Factitious is the covering word for that. It's constructed. And they only want that so you can be passing off the wisdom of Plato, Socrates, and Jesus in a single sentence. And they're still grinding in their heads, I have the net ready, I'm going to drop it on them any minute. Not even listening to you. Mm-hmm. It's not an interview, it's a plot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, that's why I'm hoping that these long form videos are transformative. I've had a discussion with a couple of political figures, and that is going to continue, I hope. I believe that in a 2-hour discussion, you reveal yourself. I don't think you can help it. And you might reveal yourself as someone who's covering up so they won't reveal themselves.
Yeah,
but that's
I know.
Revealing in and of itself.
It is. I used to say that when, especially doing political interviews in Newfoundland, I remember one cabinet minister in particular said, well, he said, you asked me a lot. He said, but you never got me to say it. And I told him, I said, you're not saying it was the interview. There's always a reality. And unfortunately now in public communications from when I started, and this is not nostalgia to the present moment, the press have so many of the press organs have just dropped all the essential attributes of news gathering and information and have become partisans, have become propagandists, are advancing agendas, all under, we are the guardians of the democracy.
Okay, well, so from the postmodern perspective, at least how it's generally put forward with its neo-Marxist surround, the proposition is something like all language games are games of power. And so whether you think you're doing it or not, you're putting forward an agenda. And if you can't see that, that's just a sign that you're proof. Completely... Yeah, so, but now you made a distinction between real journalism and this false journalism that you're decrying. What do you think are the characteristics of genuine journalism?
Well, the first of it is the old bromide that everyone has a bias. Well, of course they have a bias. They have a life. But we talked at the very beginning of this for a long time about education. And what education is, in another domain, is deliberately fashioning your mind to be able to stand beside itself, to be able to stand outside and look at those things that by temperament or disposition or social situation, you have automatically come to accept. We have the power of self-scrutiny. And so let me make an easy example. I love John Diefenbaker, and I'm deliberately going back as a person, and I'm going to vote for him as a citizen. But I'm a journalist, and he comes to my town of St. John. And he does a bad stumble, and he makes an awful mess of this, and whatever. And I say to myself, oh, this is John Diefenbaker, I love him, so I'm going to hold that one back. Well, no, you're a journalist, and you say, even though on a personal level, I'm going to go with him, I have the capacity to see that he really messed up here. This was stupid, this was wrong, so I'm going to report it. That's the interior of every person has control over their bias. And while we will never be perfect in expunging it, we all have a responsibility to examine where we are on our own personal domain. And if that's the case, then if you're covering politics and you let yourself be agitated by the emotions of either hatred or love and do damage to the ones you hate and puff up the ones you love, you're lying. And the idea that because we all have bias, that therefore you go to the ridiculous extreme of not only indulging it, but injecting it into everything, every story and every story meeting that you have. Journalists want to have it both ways. I tell you what, one of the silliest phrases in Western journalism is speaking truth to power. This is when I always go back to your hero, Solzhenitsyn. If you want to know what speaking truth to power is, have 10 years in Siberia, have a tyranny visit your family. That's speaking truth to power. These are sacred words. And you get it over here when someone makes a jab at Donald Trump. Dear God, it's a comedy.
So you were 8 years with Here and Now?
Yeah, 8 years in Newfoundland every night, five nights a week, and traveled all over the province.
Right. So you're traveling everywhere. You're doing book reviews. You're doing classical music reviews. So you're continuing your education in a major way.
Yeah. That's why I have one boast that I'm not ashamed of. I've never stopped liking English literature. It wasn't the door that closed when you walked into the university. I'm reading Sir Thomas Browne right now. I read him 45 years ago, I suppose. The enthusiasm and energy that comes from the best writers, you've adverted to the best, Matthew Arnold, the best that has been thought and said, is still there. And that's almost a surprising thing, that even at this very nocturnal hour, the kind of exuberance that you had at 20 still lingers in the chambers of music and literature.
Well, that's something, yes, I would say so. Obviously something indicating the lasting benefit of a genuine education in the humanities. It's an inexhaustible source of what exactly? Well, we said mimicry of the great spirit that animates the ages, right? How could that possibly get old?
No, I like your description, because it's not often presented as that. And now, of course, the idea that education is for the job. I do know how important jobs are. I come from Newfoundland. But there's a whole set of spirits, as you know, you've met them, that also see that there's another target in education, and that you just spoke of it. You remember always, John, the better to enjoy life or the better to endure it. I don't think there's a better short description of what education is.
No, I had a vision at one point of the people, many people who were influential to me in my life. This particular vision mostly involved men, and so it was like a review in my mind of men that I had seen that had been influential to me. And then it was like there was something behind that was the greater men that I had been exposed to as a student, the people I had read and identified with. I mean, when I found someone, a thinker that captured me, I tended to read everything I could that they had produced. And I would fall into their mode of thinking. It would take me over completely. And then I'd reemerge somewhat on the other side, changed, but then I could see behind those great thinkers, there was something else. And I think that's something that, people think about that as the ancestral God, the ancestral father. And that was the spirit that was shining through the great men I had read. And then all the people that had influenced me, it shone through what was great, good and great about them.
By the way, good and great, you're committing terrible